Now, before we get this video started, here is the tier list. If you don't want to watch the whole thing, I'm going to timestamp. I've done all-arounders, then I've classed them by whatever style of Pokemon they are. Now, this is it. If you don't agree with anything, definitely let me know. And if you are looking for coaching to improve, I'm giving away 5 2-hour coaching sessions. Here's my Discord handle. Just comment on the video saying that you'd like to have one, and I'll reply to confirm, and we can have a chat on Discord. Alright, to start this tier list off, let's go with the all-arounders. So we've got Garchomp here. Do I think he's hard to use? Not really. I don't think he's brain dead though. I'm going to put him in the don't aim and you'll be alright. Lucario, infinite skill cap. I think both sets, specifically E-Speed and Bone Rush, is just, you could play like 5,000 games with Lucario and you still aren't using the character perfectly. There's so many creative plays you can make with him, so he's definitely infinite skill cap. It's like you can just get better and better and better at the character. Next, we've got Charizard. Charizard is essentially don't aim and you'll be good. You can't be too brain dead with him though. Like you have to know how to kite properly with him, but yeah, it doesn't really require much skill. Okay, like play 5 games and you should be able to pick up how to use the character. Machamp. Machamp is not great. But this isn't a how good or bad he is. It's how skillful you need to be to use the character. And I'm going to put him in requires some skill. Okay, he's not hard to use, but you need to aim your skills. And you need to have your brain switched on when you're using him. Because if you dive in at the wrong time, it's not a good idea. Next up, Dragonite. Dragonite, I'm going to say he's pretty much requiring a bit of skill. I'd say borderline hard to use, just because you've got to be good with your dragon dances. You've got to keep an eye on like the reset timer. Actually, I'm gonna put him in hard to use. I think he's pretty hard to use well. But that he's pretty arguable. He's on the bench there. Okay, Serena, hard to use. You can pick up the character, but I think there's a lot to learn. You've got to keep your eyes on a lot of things. I don't think he's got like an infinite skill cap, but he's definitely a tricky Pokemon to get the knack of. Aegislash, I'm going to put him in infinite skill cap just because you can do so many things with Wide Guard and a Sacred Sword that it's not even funny. Like that set is just... You can just keep thinking of ways to lane with them. There's so many different ways you can use that character, and when to be in sword, when to be in shield. There's so many different things to consider. So I'd say infinite skill cap. Not as much as Lucario, but I mean infinite is infinite. So you know, play 100 games, play 1,000 games, you're still going to improve with the character. Buzzwole. Buzzwole feels like you just mash buttons. Okay, like you can't be brain dead, but it feels like you're just mashing buttons when you're using the character. I'd say the same thing for T-Tar. Again, T-Tar is you're just mashing buttons. Okay, I don't think there's a lot of actual skill being used. The characters are pretty good, but yeah, definitely not that hard to use. Scyther, borderline. I'd say he's pretty hard to use. But not, you know, give it 50 or so games and really have a think about what you're doing. I'd say the same for Scizor. Again, like these two require a lot of skill, but yeah, they're both kind of borderline on the fence there. Scyther's definitely better than Scizor if you're going offensive, but yeah, they're both really good and they both require some skill. I would definitely say so. And wrapping up the all-arounders, we have got Urshifu. Urshifu, if you're going to use it properly, it's not easier to do. I think the Wicked Blow set is definitely the better set, but yeah, hard to use, requires some skill, yes, and is actually... It's hard to use because of his lack of range. But he's got dashing, he's got a really cool laning phase. You have to be good early with the laning phase. He's not overpowered like Lucario, so yeah, hard to use. It's tough because what I say is infinite skill cap. I don't know. It's still early days with Urshifu. He might be considered up there, but I'm going to just put him in hard to use. Now let's move on to our attackers. Okay, Venusaur, definitely brain dead. Okay, again, I'm not saying if you use Venusaur you're bad. I'm saying Venusaur takes about 5 games to master, the Petal Dance set. Solar Beam, different story. If we're talking Solar Beam, hard to use. But nobody really uses the Solar Beam set. It's not as popular, so I'm going to slap him in Brain Dead. Gardevoir. Gardevoir requires some skill. Like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily hard to use. You'll pick it up. He's good, but he definitely does require some skill. Greninja, infinite skill cap. Okay, there are so many plays you can do a smoke screen. There's so many ways you can chain off the farm with Surf. You can bait enemies in. He's a really awesome, fun character to use. You can get better and better and better at it. Heaps of fun. Definitely infinite skill cap. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum is Cinderace, Brain Dead. Again, amazing character, a lot of fun to use, really, really good, but there's not a lot of skill going into Cinderace. There's a, which way do I pivot my Blaze Kick? And then eject away with Flame Charge and eject button. There's not a lot to the character, but no, it's pretty straight. And you hold the A button. It's pretty straightforward. Cramorant, I'd say it requires some skill. You need to aim your moves. Hard to use? No, wouldn't say that. But you'd need to use them in practice mode, have a couple laning phases, talk to somebody who knows what they're doing. But yeah, you can't just mash buttons and do well with Cramorant. You've got to have some skill. Pikachu, on the other hand, is pretty brain dead. Okay, he's pretty straightforward to use. Ninetales, you have to play smart with Ninetales because it's got little to no mobility. So I'm going to say not brain dead, but you're not really aiming your moves. So yeah, definitely. Well, he kind of fits the bill, right? Don't aim and you'll be all good. You'll do a bit of damage. Sylveon requires some skill. Okay, Hyper Voice, Mystical Fire. You've got to dash around. You've got to use your mobility. Definitely hard to use. No, requires some skill. He's not hard to use. He just requires some skill. You've got to be thinking. Decidueye, this is hard. I'm almost gonna go. I'm gonna go infinite skill cap just because this is a character I've used a lot and I'm still learning. I'm still getting. I think I've played like 700, 800 games with the character, and I'm still figuring out ways to position better. I think the character's extremely strong. In the right hands, and the more you play it, the more you'll learn and the better you'll get. Doesn't mean it's the best character. It just means it's really freaking hard to use, and there's a high skill cap to it. So the more you use it and the more you understand Unite, the better that character can be. Duraludon, don't aim, you'll be okay. Borderline brain dead. Actually, he's brain dead. Espeon, hard to use. Okay, you have to think. His mobility sucks. You need to really be on the ball with your skills. Requires more than just a bit of skill. He's hard to use, and if you're bad, Espeon will be the character that highlights that you're. Well, I shouldn't say you're bad. Okay, if you don't know how to use Espeon and you jump into a game and you deal 15k and you take 60, that's why, because he's hard to use. So go into practice mode before you do anything. Delphox. This is tricky. He's not infinite. He requires skill. I'm gonna put him in hard to use. I'm gonna keep him in hard to use just because his lack of HP and sustain means you must be thinking all the time. You must be aware of your positioning. And his abilities, the way you can use your dash with the Mystical Fire, really, really strong, but you have to be on the ball. Glaceon, don't aim, you'll be all good. Mew, infinite skill cap. This character's hard to use. This character has so many creative plays you can make with it. He's got so many different skills. You have to know or preemptively try and predict which skill is the best in which scenario. You can cycle through them every 20 seconds. You're constantly having to be on the ball when you use Mew. I think You could play 10,000 games with the character and you're still not good enough. The character's so complex. Heaps of fun. Sucks about his nerf, but it's probably for the best. And Dragapult, he does require skill. Again, it's similar boat to Urshifu. Haven't used enough of him to have a really pure good judgment. But yeah, you have to have some level of skill and understanding when using the character. You can't just click a button and be okay with it. Alright, let's go to our supporters. I like our supporters. Mime, Power Swap. Okay, it's not Brain Dead. It's not Don't Aim and You'll Be All Good. It kind of is. It's sort of like click Power Swap. If you hit, great. If you don't hit, it's got like a 2-second cooldown. So, and then you click Psychic and you don't have to do anything. And he's super tanky. So I think we'll comfortably leave him there. Eldegoss, hard to use. He requires skill, but this is going to be a thing with the supporters, is that this is why there's not many good supports going around, is that A, you probably don't trust your attackers to do it, but B, they're actually not easy to use. It's very easy to be a bad supporter, and when we get a good one, we are so thankful that we have a good one. So Eldegoss, I'm going to say is hard to use. I've played it a bit, and I still wish I could do it a lot better. Wigglytuff is going to require some skill. Again, you've got to think when you're using the character. Blissey, hard to use. Not infinite, but it's definitely tricky to use, because if you're off farming by yourself with Blissey, you're doing the wrong thing, and that means you can't use it brain dead. You have to be aware of where your team is. You have to try and pocket your attacker. You have to have so much trust in your team. And you need to be using your skills at the right time. Like, you can't just throw out a safeguard for the heck of it. You have to see what's coming and try and protect you and your team. So, definitely hard to use. If you're a good Blissey player, you are what the community needs more of. So, thank you for those people who play Blissey well. I love playing Blissey as well. I always, that's the support. That's my go-to supporter when my team just picks attackers. He's so tanky. And it's not brain dead. Like, you have to be thinking all the time, and you just have to trust your team. If your attackers do well, you have a good time. He's heaps of fun. Hooper. You need to aim with Hooper. He requires some skill. I don't think he's awfully hard to use. In a 5-stack, infinite skill. But, if you're just doing a duo queue, I think he requires some skill. That portal in the 5-stack, that would probably put him up there. But different context, I think he sits pretty comfortably here. Sableye requires a bit of skill. Is he annoying? Yes. Is he balanced? Absolutely. He is balanced. He's not broken. He's not a tank. He doesn't do a lot of damage. He's just a pest. He provides a lot of good vision, and he requires some skill. Let's go to our defenders. Snorlax, skill. Yes. A lot? No. Crustle, brain dead. Blastoise, brain dead. Clefable, feels like an AoE character. Don't aim and you'll be good. Slowbro, it feels like a lot of the Slowbros. I haven't played a lot of Slowbro. I don't think he's that hard to use. I'm going to put a don't aim and you'll be good. I don't think he's brain dead because you have to use his ult properly, but yeah. Mamoswine. I love Mamoswine. I think Mamoswine's so much fun. I think he's pretty challenging to get a grip of, but he's not that hard. So I'm gonna say you do have to aim stuff. You definitely have to be switched on because his skills have a long cooldown. So I'm gonna put him there. Greedent, hard to use. So much fun, but absolutely is pretty tricky to get the hang of. The way that Covet skids around, you're like a drifting V8. You've just gotta maintain and know where your belch is going to be going off into. Tree. Oh, I've missed an all-rounder. Azzy. Well, Azzy's don't aim and you'll be okay. I think he's brain dead, but no, you don't really have to do a whole lot with that character. Trevenant. Let me put him up here. Trevenant. Don't aim. You'll be fine. And let's go on to our speedsters. Gengar, skill. Yeah, he requires a bit of skill. He's not that hard to use. Absol, yeah, he requires some skill. If you play some games with him, you'll get the hang of it, and that's pretty much as far as he gets. Talonflame's a bit the same. You know, again, you have to think about what you're doing with the character. You've got to aim stuff, but once you get the hang of it, you get the hang of it. That's pretty much all there is to it. Zeraora depends on the set. If you're going Wild Charge, it's pretty hard to use, but typically it's just it requires a bit of skill, and that's about that. Dodrio's freaking hard to use. Is he infinite skill cap? No, but you can't just pick up this character or play like 10 games and think you're going to be okay. You need to go into practice mode. You need to like have a different mindset when you're approaching, just because of how the skills work and how fast he is and how frail he is, and it requires more than just a bit of some skill, okay? If you haven't put the hours into Dodrio, if you haven't gone into practice mode, please don't just jump into ranked, okay? You're going to deal 20k and take 70, and people are not going to be happy with you. So put the time into the character. It's strong, but it needs some figuring out. Zeraorc, similar story with the Urshifu stuff. Requires skill. Yeah, I think it requires skill. You can't just not aim with the character, but yeah,